Boom! We are alive, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tio, the Arcane Bear, coming at you with our monetary mysticism, our flavors of the philanthropic, and the fact that this is financial entertainment, ladies and gentlemen, and that's exactly what Bitcoin has been over the last few years. Nothing short of entertaining. And through that process, we try to make it as educational as possible as well, because there's always something bewildering and exciting to learn. And the fresher, the more flexible in our minds we can stay as all of these new innovations take place, the more productive we'll be. So with that in mind, we like to start with our collateral layer and just take a kind of basically a daily look at where the markets are at, starting with Bitcoin. Yay, Bitcoin. Round of applause at $51,875 approximately at this particular moment. But this trading range that we've been building into for the last few weeks, looking great so far. Again, the idea of a spring here between the 11th to the whatever, somewhere around here, still on the plate. Again, as you can see, there are at least one major confounding potential here. Not normally a pattern trader, but when you're looking in areas and boxes of accumulation, one of the things you can look for is head and shoulders patterns like this. And as you can see, if we break above the resistance, we should have a strong move to this side. And again, if we look at the previous trading range, we didn't see a head and shoulders necessarily, but as soon as we broke out of the resistance, we carried up and above and beyond the trading range quite quickly. So I wanted to make a little bit of further conjecture based off of what did I get? Where was it? This one. I thought this was nice. The amount of Bitcoin held by different miners. And I wanted to read this part specifically. Miner positions. Miners are extremely bullish as a Bitcoin network participant, having made huge investments in not just hardware, but facilities. So this is from Glassnode as well. They said that this remains the compulsory sellers of BTC on ongoing capital operations costs. And this is exactly what we've pointed out many times in multiple videos about the idea of F2 pool. That's their business model. Of course they're doing that. We always knew that would happen. So let's not call it manipulation or dumping. It's just a normal sequence of events when businesses want to operate as functional businesses. Yes. So it says, if we investigate the balance of known miners, again, shout out to Glassnode for this one, filtered for miners of Glassnode has clusters for, we can see that up until January 2021, miners were basically in accumulation mode, and miner distribution has occurred through 2021. And we saw this again in some of our other Glassnode data that we had gone over, not in the exchange balance stacked, but the amount of miner net position. There's a massive amount of selling in early January, and this limited amount that we've had now is actually quite small. So to keep that in mind, we'll just finish off this little piece here by them. Again, it is through 2021, but not to the same magnitude preceding the accumulation phase, which means, again, if we look over here, which one was it? This one. No, this one. Yes. Yeah, there we go. You look at the net miner position is basically rolled to a standstill, and now we're expecting a further decrease over the time of being in the bull market. Effectively, what they want to do is be able to make as much profit as possible. And that's where these kind of blowout moments that we've seen in the past, I think, in relationship with the stock to flow model and just the general hype and euphoria cycles that go along, juxtaposed to the fears of or the cycles of fear and unknowingness. So again, we can see that F2 pool here has been dropping off quite a bit, but again, this is a nice little data point as well here. So miners have been accumulating and then generally starting to distribute their shares as well, which makes sense. That's the whole point of the bull market: advertise the price and then sell your stock at a greater rate than what you bought it for. It's supply, demand, sales. Anyways, that's kind of how this game works. But I thought this was kind of a nice little metric to take a look at today, because when we're looking at the support ranges being built right now, we're seeing lots of bullish news come out. Lots of people are buying Bitcoin. There's being a general new kind of mental floor put in this space. I've seen a bunch of people make videos about the stock market crash and, oh my God, is the market going to crash? And I've said for a bunch of, I don't know how long, probably almost a year now, since before the pandemic at least, I was quite convinced, and I still am, that we're just going to basically see a monetary melt up in all asset prices, which is effectively everything just moving up and up and up because they're printing the dollar at such an accelerated rate to keep velocity moving through the ecosystem, because you kind of have to. I don't know. It's a weird one. But with that in mind, it ultimately benefits our collateral layer. As these assets inflate, Bitcoin will move along with that ride. What the cycle crashes and downs look like, I don't want to make too much at. It is Monday, though, so I guess very quickly, just for fun, we could roll up to the VIX, take a look at how our volatility index is doing. We're still below our trend line, which is great. And the S&P 500, just a quick little shout out to the S&P 500. Looked like it produced its primary shakeout on the start of a new trading range. Very similar to where it already had a primary support. So buying climax, first shakeout, looks pretty good. And there's a significant amount of supply here. And notice that right now you had again, a decreased amount of effort versus the result. So again, compare, for those of you that are enjoying the ride with the study so far, compare the volume signature of the S&P 500 back in November to now. We have a significantly higher supply signature coming in and a decreased price spread. So ultimately, this is a bullish signal still. If we started to see a breakdown, if this actually moved down off less supply, that would be indicative of the breakdown of the structure itself. But it's much more likely that this is actually the shakeout and a continuation into what I believe is going to be a full-on bull market. We've got stimulus right around the corner. These are all extremely bullish indicators for the general macro thesis that we're kind of partaking in, which is that there's a better way to do finance. And the rails of DeFi are extremely exciting. And we see nice, again, recovery here in Ethereum. Looks, I don't like pattern trading, but it does look like the potential of inverse head and shoulders on the bottom part of our accumulation range. And this is actually quite normal. If you've read the private PDFs, you're part of the private group, you'll recognize these inverse patterns. Although again, the lower the time frame, the less reliable. We are much usually more interested in finding multi-week, multi-month accumulation, multi-year accumulation cycles. You just get a bigger bang for your buck when you do enter, and your timing with that and how you can play that to your advantage is significantly more and more powerful as time goes on. Again, take a look at where we started back here in March, and here we are to like a year later, effectively, 1,200% higher on Ethereum a year later from where we started. And we see that throughout the ecosystem. So because we are up high, we're probably about 11/16 the way through the bull market. It's creeping up. It gets a little faster. The time decay, the theta on this one seems to increase as we get closer to the end. And so does the volatility. And that was a little worrying about Ethereum, but nice recovery. And again, the smaller kind of head and shoulders inside a trading range. So remember that these are fractal. It's likely that we saw our primary support, buying climax again, and seeing a whole new structure of formation appear, which we have seen before, where this is A, B, C, D, and then E becomes the final breakout, where you have this rising gradient bottom pattern, and sometimes what's also known as these kind of megaphone patterns. But we saw that earlier on in Ethereum. That was like a really sexy, poignant position. It went basically something like this. The widening megaphone pattern that Jesse Livermore talks about. In the breakout here, you can see we've been extremely volatile since then, and to the positive side as well. So we can see it potentially starting to form again here, which is interesting. You know, in these cycles, because we have such new, again, I would have to like kind of force it, so I don't actually really feel good about drawing that, but we always have to wonder, as we saw with cup and handles, do they start to execute sometimes on a smaller time frame with more reliability, because we have a 24-hour day, 7-day a week trade desk effectively, which we've never seen before. Yeah. So yeah, I guess in general, between both, everything looks quite healthy. The recovery from Ethereum was good. Again, I'm still subtly concerned. Again, not concerned because I have Avalanche. I have taken positions in the other players that are basically better than Ethereum at this moment. But everything gets worked out over time. So from a venture standpoint, a lot more has been going into research, and that kind of brings me to a secondary point here. We were going to go in, and we've started to add some new breakdowns to how the portfolio will be viewed. We'll have new sections where we'll have basically free to the public research breakdowns from our internal team about what the fuck is Avalanche and what the fuck is all these other things. That may even be what it's called, right? I doubt it, but we may even call it that just for fun. We'll be like, what the fuck is this new Keeper DAO? God damn it, more things we have to... Well, anyways, we like reading, we like producing information, and I guess learning. Part of the the composer process is not just learning how to read music, but it's learning how to write. Sometimes you're playing with so many similar styles and structures. What we want to do here is just adapt an informative style to the things we find interesting as they come along, and a way to share that information, because it's been very valuable, I think, through time. So there's obviously the start of that's taking place here. So exciting to see. I think that's it for today, guys. Thank you for joining us. Today's episode was mostly, again, this is financial entertainment. Part of the process of education is finding a way to make it more playful, exciting, and fun. We've got these crazy Wyckoff memes in the group. I have a great time building this stuff. I think it's extremely important. It's also helpful to have both macro and micro perspectives, and often when we first start trading and investing, it's really easy to get caught up on the day-to-day movements, especially because we're learning, we're going over stuff. But when you're investing in a new sector, you really want to keep a macro, 10-year perspective, because this stuff all washes out over time. And it's one of the hardest things to recognize, I think, is when you get to minutia in any of your trades, your investments, or probably even your life. If you get too nitpicky with yourself and become too perfectionist and don't see... I think, what do they say? You don't see the forest for the trees, or something like this. You can't tell the separation between each of these passing moments. The monetary mystic. That's what we're doing. Profit. All profits will now have more profits. So we're doing great over here. So thank you. We're gonna take a few questions today. Let's take a look here at the chat. Okay, back to the top of the chat here. It says, patiently waiting for eagerly anticipated face melting moves in the markets. What's funny here, I love comments like this, because it really goes to show that we are at the very least 11/16 the way through the bull market. Because retail comments are very noticeably different than a well-educated vested vested learner. Yeah, that's for sure. So that's what I have to say to Scouser Graham. Bueno Squad says Richard Wyckoff would be very excited on the reaccumulation phase. Yeah, we're seeing some really interesting phases take place here. Again, we've seen a lot of strength in multiple areas. We're just kind of watching from as a broad perspective as possible. Bitcoin's doing fantastic stair-step functions. We've got a lot of volatility around the rest of the sector, but it's basically all venture capital. But at the plus side is the benefit of the entire financial ecosystem. All these things seem to be incredibly pro-productive, right? They seem to be more collaborative than destructive by nature, which is fantastic. Greg Usler says BitBoy actually thinks F2 Pool targets him when he does live trades by dumping. Classic. That's funny. What are your thoughts on pump and dump of PPT? It's always to be careful, ladies and gentlemen. If you, I say this, I've said this a few times, in your venture capital bag, if you see returns over your initial, here's a simpler way to put it. When I see returns of my initial over top of anything that's there, I usually just take it out and walk away, because that way, no matter what happens, I can think about it in like 3 to 5 years from now, hopefully. If it's a venture capital play, I'm not trying to like get in and then get out of the trade necessarily. If it all of a sudden becomes an astronomically much higher portion of the portfolio, it's a different sentiment. But from venture capital, it's really no think money. We also try to do as much research and think into where we lean into those positions, but that's a bit different than just making broader spectrum plays. I'm not necessarily sure I would have a significant amount of capital in PPT ever. It would only be a small amount, and if it ended up being worth nothing, that wouldn't bother me. Charles Winder says, I've just bought back into Alley alts. Okay, awesome. Congratulations for doing something. Yay, people are doing things. Nice. 11/16 long range crypto says is 0.6875. Well, that's helpful. Thank you. Nice. Rivi says sexy and technology is why I got into crypto. 100%. Baloo says it's a pool. Hello. Yeah, they're supposed to sell. That's literally how CompMan operates. How are the double round bottoms looking out here? Great. If you saw some of my Instagram stories, I was shooting with a fantastic friend the other day. Remco Power says, a few weeks ago you said AVAX is could easily go to $5 a run. Of course, there's not financial advice. Do you still? I actually, okay, asking a question about Avalanche. When I make outward predictions, they don't happen overnight, and they're within an area of buffer pretty fucking easily. Like I remember when talking about Bitcoin at 10 grand, what was it, $1,000? I looked absolutely insane. I had videos of Litecoin being $600 when it was like $15, and then it goes to $300 or $400, and people are like, oh, it didn't go to exactly 600. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Patience is a key part of that game, and relativity. Relativity is so important. And maybe it's not a core function. Let's say quantum perspective. That's an easier way to say it. As long as you have a quantum perspective, ain't no thing, but chill. You need to chill out. You need to do more reading. That's what you should definitely be doing. Prince Knight says, Tio also has a good perspective on these markets. Yeah, I'm just trying to be as entertaining about what I'm learning as possible. That's kind of one of my personal goals, at least today. I have a personal goal for today. We'll figure out what tomorrow's goal is. One day at a time for the mystic market magic whispering here. Clarity with ayahuasca, any Wyckoff inspiration on the voyage. It's interesting, again, more than my financial interests. Ayahuasca is always about like, did you burn sage? Did you like close your eyes and say thank you? Random shit. Like, did you smile at someone who looked like they may have enjoyed a smile? Like, I usually trip out about like really like how the world can be made a better place by like small things we do. Because often I'll forget to do something, just it could be extra, be nicer, like overt, like not overtly, but it's in small ways, like to remember to smile at people, like hola, say hello. Like my dogs always run down the beach and talk to every other dog out there. Like we have a hard enough time just looking at each other and smiling and be like, hey, I recognize you. Life's difficult. Like, what up? I'm here too. It's all good. Book recommendations. I think we're going to write those on the website during this kind of next upgrade we're going through. Are we moving at a lot faster pace than last year? We haven't been. Last year wasn't a bull market, 2020 or 2019, which it's still basically 2020 to some degree. I know it's 2021, but it's just started. So yes, all of last year's growth was basically the first 65% of the bull market. The last little bit is usually the most ridiculous. It happens very quickly, turns around very quickly as well. Thoughts on Avalanche? Yeah, we'll have our research papers go out. I mean, in terms of price, I think I made my venture capital perspective very clear over and over and over again. I don't know how else you can take it. Not financial advice. It's just there's a style to how you play everything for sure. Otherwise, it's very easy to make mistakes. You have to decide what kind of style you're focusing on. Avalanche is pretty much everything outside of, look guys, if you just play it this way, everything outside of Bitcoin is venture capital, which means it has a high likelihood of becoming fucking worthless. Okay, keep that in mind. That should be your primary function. Like, more than, oh my God, Avalanche could go to $500. Your primary function should know, yeah, it could go to zero. I'm invested like it could go to zero. Okay. I'm also speculating at different times depending on where we are in that moment, whether it's hopefully more pure venture capital plays or mid. I mean, this is basically early to mid venture capital play still, the birthplace of so much new technology on a day-to-day basis. I think Litecoin is going to surprise us. It's always good to have more baby Bitcoins. I think all of the baby Bitcoins will probably be one day be looked at as like collector's items. From Digibyte to Doge, all these things will basically be considered collector's items. And probably pretty fucking valuable ones. Keep that in mind. Thoughts on your return of 40K or below to hit the spring? Yeah, again, it's some more of a patience thing. If we focus in on the trading range we've been moving through, we have stayed above the middle of this point of control for quite some time. So it looks bullish, and we've got an inverse head and shoulders. But if we get stuck here and we start to turn around, that's likely where we'll see the spring. Anything can happen. We don't have nothing bad has to happen right now. It's just this is where it might be. Doesn't have to be that way. It might not be that big of a deal. It might be just like minor news before we go. We don't know what's going to happen, but this will be an area of news. Something in the news will come out here, and then people are like, oh, see, the thing in the news happened. But I'm telling you, there's going to be a thing in the news happening somewhere, somewhere here. It's irrelevant. It's just this space and time has some tension moving, or release, however you want to look at it, moving into it. Well, awesome, guys. Thanks for joining us on today's episode. A Monday morning, kind of mellow in the bull market. We've been building some stuff. Again, we're going to further work on our deep dives into things like Avalanche. So it makes more sense. And just more content about like what is venture capital, what is asymmetry, probably more content about how to use options and whether you can even trade with options depending on what jurisdiction you're in. Yeah, so we'll continue to increase our interest in more valuable information as we go. I think this idea of self-managed portfolios, this movement of GameStop to individualized management of wealth and interest and experimentation, and then just even plain old participation in this ecosystem is hyper valuable. So don't forget that. Be grateful. Enjoy your time here. We're at the birthplace of for quite a few years now. This thing's like walking. It's more like the toddler, I guess. It's like every time it does something new, it's like, wow, it's done something new. Like it can walk for the first time. It can talk for the first time. It's making sentences. Oh my God, it can sing. Code is like an art form that kind of comes alive in the conversation of the human infrastructure layers. So keep that in mind. We'll see you guys in the next episode.